republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Staff, any agenda changes?
Mr. Mayor, no changes.
Council? At this time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, Successor Agency, to the Elkhorn Redevelopment Agency that is not on the agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time the item is heard. State law prohibits discussion or action on items that are not on the agenda. However, Council, Authority, and agency members may briefly respond to statements or questions, and an item may be placed on a future agenda. Angela, do we have any cards under public comment?
There are no cards, sir.
We are now at public hearing. Item 100 is for the deemed approved lodging establishment ordinance. And staff, would you please tell us about this?
Yes, Mayor and Council, thank you very much. This item would be a new ordinance in the zoning code applicable to existing motels and hotels in El Cajon. The purpose of the ordinance is to establish a level playing field for all motel and hotel properties with a common set of minimum expectations for property maintenance, security, and management. The intent is to ensure that guests of these establishments have safe and clean lodging and to minimize nuisance or criminal activity sometimes associated with temporary lodging. Lastly, this deemed approved ordinance will provide a mechanism to deal with problem properties with ongoing issues that the property owner and the manager are unwilling to address. So just a bit of background. This map here is showing the distribution of lodging establishments across the city. And you'll see this as an attachment in your report. So if it's a little hard to see, there is this attachment in your attached to your report. These range from small 10-room motels to 183 rooms. They are primarily located on the city's primary commercial corridors of Main Street, Elkhorn Boulevard, Magnolia, and the I-8 freeway. There are 1,000 motel rooms in the city, and 260 hotel rooms are either open or under construction. Now, there's been an established pattern of problems with lodging establishments in El Cajon over recent years. In severe cases, staff has come to see that some are a source of gang and drug activity, prostitution, and drug sales. There is a history of arrest for assault. These issues of criminal activity are often found to go hand in hand with other issues such as severe pest infestations and just general filth. Building and fire code violations along with unpermitted construction. These issues have a cost to the city, not only in police and code compliance staff time, which in some cases range up towards $100,000 for police response in 1 year just for one hotel, which also included 400 calls for service. There's also a cost to surrounding property and lost economic activity, as well as public perception. So this zoning code amendment was initiated last February, and a working group consisting of police, finance, building, planning, and the city attorney's office worked together to develop the proposed deemed approved ordinance. Input from the motel and hotel stakeholders also informed the process and guided the city to the approach currently being proposed to the City Council tonight. This is based on the deemed approved approach that the City of Oakland has taken regarding lodging establishments, as well as the city's own alcohol sales deemed approved ordinance, which has proven effective at reducing alcohol-related arrests and addressing outlets selling alcohol to minors. This approach minimizes governmental involvement in that no permit or any other action is required. Motel and hotel owners and operators who are responsible in their operations and adhere to the performance standards have certainty that they can continue to operate. This minimizes the impact on existing business in the city, but this also provides a mechanism to address issues arising from problem properties. Now, I'd like to just get into a little bit of the nuts and bolts of the deemed approved ordinance and of how this lodging how the ordinance would work. So if approved, each motel and hotel would be granted deemed approved status. For those establishments without a conditional use permit, it would replace legal nonconforming status. For all others, it would apply insofar as the standards are not already conditions of approval. With this status comes the responsibility to comply with performance standards. And these are included in the draft ordinance and addressed the following. Operations. On-site management, for example, for 12 or more rooms, no room may be let more than once per day. For registration, this section was actually removed from the proposed ordinance, and because it's already in the existing code in Title IX. So there's just reference that's made to registration. In terms of security, example would be locks on doors adjoining rooms that have common doors, drapes for privacy on windows, drapes on windows for privacy. The property overall has to be free of garbage and graffiti removed within a specific time frame. Maintenance and housekeeping, provide cleaning services, hot and cold running water, room maintained without significant damage, some basic housing conditions. In terms of nuisance, no illegal drugs, prostitution, vandalism, transient occupancy tax required to be paid, and of course compliance with all building, fire, and housing codes. It is intended to do regular inspections, to monitor conditions, and work with property owners to resolve any violations. The process to address violations is how we address any code compliance violation in the city. Typically, it begins with an investigation, a written notice of violation, and an opportunity to resolve within a reasonable time frame. In cases where it's prolonged or nuisance activities, where the property owner is unable or unwilling to rectify the violation, then we have a process that's codified in the deemed approved ordinance that the deemed approved activity can be brought before the Planning Commission to be considered for suspending or modified or even revoked, and which was the case that the City Council did for a couple of alcohol outlets under the alcohol deemed approved ordinance. This would be a last resort, and it's not something that would start right away with. This action is also subject to appeal to the City Council, of course, after the Planning Commission makes their decision. As with the alcohol sales ordinance, an establishment may also apply for conditional use permit, and if granted, they can continue to operate, but just now they would have a set standards that they would have to abide by beyond the performance standards that are in the deemed approved ordinance. Regarding public input, public notice and input, this proposed ordinance was published in the East County Gazette on April 25th of this year. Notice has been mailed to all motel property owners and their operators. At May 17, 2018, we had a stakeholder workshop at the Marriott, which included all the operators to get input on the approach that the city was taking. The Planning Commission has recommended City Council approval. They did that on May 21st with a 4-0. Before that May 21st meeting, the Planning Commission held a workshop where they took input from the operators and made some slight modifications to the ordinance that's before the City Council tonight. So staff recommends approval of the amendment that's presented to the City Council, and asks that the City Council, after public hearing and after public testimony, that the City Council move to introduce the next ordinance in order, approving the zoning code amendment, and direct the city clerk to recite the title. Staff is available to answer any questions.
Thanks, Tony. Good report. Bob?
Is there any way that we could require video in the lobbies of these motels, hotels, so that if the police wanted to, they could go in and ask for the tape and just to make sure that they were following the ordinance? Is there any way that we could do that, Morgan?
As a condition of approval, we might, if we had a problem, hotel or motel, you might consider, and we could look into it, requiring closed-circuit television in common areas, but police could not look at it unless they were given permission to use it. We cannot require them to allow police to, at any time, inspect the tape. They'd have to either be voluntarily given to them or we'd have to get a search warrant.
Well, if, say, there was one that was a known use for prostitution or drugs or something like that, maybe we could require them to have it as a condition of their continued use of the rooms, and then we could get a search warrant if we thought it was necessary to see what was going on.
Well,
Counsel, if I might, I think the preferred approach would be that with deemed approved status, they're subject to meeting certain performance standards. If they were not able to do that, and deemed approved status was revoked at a public hearing in front of the Planning Commission, and a conditional use permit was then approved to allow them to continue. At that point, conditions may include, if the Planning Commission would approve that condition, to add closed circuit or video recording, that when appropriate and under a search warrant, then the police could perhaps, if needed, to look at that video, they could at that time.
Yeah, thank you.
Steve?
What were some of the issues raised at the Planning Commission workshops?
The Planning Commission workshops, one issue that was raised even before the workshop was the use of calls for service being a sole metric in determining if there was nuisance activity. That was taken out of the ordinance, and not made part of the ordinance. We want operators to call the police when needed. They felt that if they did call when there was a need, that could go against them. So that was taken away. What else was taken away was there was a requirement that co-compliance contact information be posted in every room. So if they found something that a guest found something that wasn't appealing to them, they could call city co-compliance. That was taken out of the that requirement was taken out and put. It was required to be put in the lobby. So those were just some of the minor issues that came up.
Okay. A couple of months ago, a group of probably 6 to 9 operators invited me to a meeting to share their concerns. And calls for service was certainly a concern because they felt that calls related to acts by people who are homeless were beyond their control, and they didn't want to get dinged for that. So it sounds fair that we have removed that. It is interesting to note, though, that they felt that offering wireless internet access was actually a magnet for this kind of destructive behavior sometimes. In other words, one person gets the password, or they ask for a password from a guest, and it would become a magnet for bad things in some situations. And so I asked them, I said, well, when I travel, I have a Wi-Fi that asks me to enter my name and my room number. And that's something that is not easy to give to somebody else. Right. Could you tell me how much that costs? And they said, well, it's very costly. And that was the end of that. So I lost my sympathy for that, because I did at least say, there is a solution. Let's talk about it. And it was kind of dismissed. So I feel like staff, and we have given them a due chance to have their concerns heard, and I think the ordinance is fair.
Absolutely. There's no permit required with this ordinance. There's no fee to pay. It just codifies a set of basic performance standards to ensure that guests who come to El Cajon at any of these facilities are provided with clean and safe rooms.
Phil?
Quick question about when I was on the commission, I heard this report. Regular inspections, did we figure out what that looks like? Is that going to be a yearly inspection? Is there going to be notice with regard to when the city is going to come in and execute that inspection?
The inspection program has been fleshed out entirely, is all predicated on if this ordinance was adopted by the City Council. Now, if it is, then we will move forward with implementing such a program. We think initially that it would require at least an annual inspection, and it would probably be fair to notice the hotel operator that we will be coming and conducting a general inspection.
Better get them cleaned up.
Thank you.
Any more questions, concerns? Thanks. All right, the public hearing is now open. Angela, do we have any speaker cards?
We have no cards.
I make a motion then to close public hearing.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Question. Calls for service. I'm sure that the police can determine this is something pertaining to the hotel or motel, or it's something pertaining to something outside like a homeless problem or something like that. I'm sure they can separate the wheat from the chaff, but I think calls for service would still be a necessary thing to monitor and maybe address those places more often that are having an increased amount of calls for service, because that's costing the city and the citizens a lot of money to make those calls on these problem areas.
Absolutely. Calls for service still can be used and will be used. It just won't be the sole metric by which we define their performance.
And they can decide, well, this is something caused by the motel or inside the motel, or it's some homeless guy that won't go away or something like that. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So that wouldn't count against them then?
No.
Okay. So it's back with us, council. If anybody would like to discuss it or make a motion. Gary?
Move to adopt the next resolution in order approving the common sense CEQA exemption. And Morgan, can I do all these at the same time?
Let's take them separately because they are it's a CEQA
Okay,
resolution.
so that's my first one.
Second.
Move the second, please vote.
Move to introduce the next ordinance in order approving zoning code amendment number 436.
Second.
Before you do that, do you want to announce the last vote?
The previous motion passed by a unanimous vote.
All right. There's a new motion on the table, and there's a second. Please vote.
With your permission, I will reset the vote.
Vote again.
Just 1 second. Please vote. Motion carries by unanimous vote.
And request that the city clerk read the ordinance by title only.
Is there a second? Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote, and the title of the ordinance is an ordinance adding Chapter 17.212 to Title 17 of the El Cajon Municipal Code to establish standards to be deemed approved for existing lodging establishments.
Thank you. This then brings us to adjournment, the adjourned regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council, El Cajon Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency, held this 11th day of June 2019, is adjourned until Tuesday, June 25th, 2019 at 3 o'clock p.m. Thank you.